So in the back of my house, I had a couple of trees come down. I really don't need a lot of firewood. I have a fire pit. So my goal is to build a log splitter using materials I already have. I don't want to spend any money on this. So I'm going to bring you along and we're going to build a log splitter. I hope you enjoy the video. If you have not already, please like the channel and subscribe. Let's get started. To build this log splitter, I have a air hydraulic bottle jack. It's 20 tons. I have an I-beam that's 7 foot long. And I have various pieces of metal laying around. First thing I did was I got measurements of the bottle jack in the resting position, extend it, then fully extend it because the screw top. So I marked down on the I-beam all these measurements to try to get an idea how long I need this piece to be and where I need to cut this I-beam. To cut this part of the I-beam, I'm using my YesWelder Cut 65 Pro. I'm going to use it to cut the top and the bottom. Then I'm going to use a cutting disc on a grinder to cut the center out. It's a little tough to get the torch into the center, and that's why I went with the cutting disc. The I-beam is 1/4 inch thick, and the Cut 65 Pro easily cut through it and made quick work of it. Using a surfacing tool, I cleaned up all the paint on the top side where I'm going to do my welding. For the base of the log splitter, I decided that I was going to cut the I-beam and use that as my base. So I measured off 14 inches, and this time I just used a cutting disc to cut it all up. The overall design of this log splitter is pretty simple. You're going to have a base, and on the top you're going to have the wedge. The bottle jack that I have, I want to make sure I'm able to remove it, so I'm just going to use C-clamps to hold it in place. I do not want this bottle jack to be permanently attached. I plan on using it for a future project. If you have a question about today's project or any tool used today, please let me know in the comments below. With this piece cut out, I cleaned up the edges. I'm going to use the surface tool again, and I'm going to clean up only in my welding areas. I'm not really worried about the underneath, just where I'm going to weld. For the wedge, I'm going to add 2 gussets for strength in the middle. So I drew the shape I want the wedge to be. I drew a line which is exactly 2 inches. I took a picture of it. In Fusion 360, you're able to add a canvas or a picture. You can calibrate it off that line, and then you can trace out your image, and you come up with your drawing being the exact size you need. With the gusset drawn up, I will now extrude it, and I can send it to the CNC table to cut it out. The plasma cutter I'm using in my CNC machine is my YesWelder CT2050. Lining up the gussets I just cut out, and they're perfect. The next thing I'm going to draw up and cut out would be a plate to sit on top of the bottle jack. So in order to do this, I'm going to cut out a circle because I want to be able to use this to adjust the height of the screw top. I'm going to use an old pipe I had to make a collar. I'm going to also use a piece of rod that'll fit in a groove so I can just turn the plate to adjust. The piece of pipe I had was a little large for the top of the bottle jack, so I cut out a piece of it so I can shrink it up so it'd fit better. Then I hammered it together until it was a perfect fit for the top of the bottle jack. This is the rod I mentioned and how it's going to sit in. So when the plate on top is sitting on there, if I twist the plate itself, it'll raise or lower the screw top on the bottle jack. So I took the plate for the bottle jack, the clamp I made, and also the rod. I centered the clamp to the middle of the plate and also centered the rod inside the middle of the clamp. I used my fabrication table and locked it down and got it ready for welding. Here is the wedge, and I have it upside down. The one gusset is for the top, then I will add another one in the middle, and then the bottom will be welded to the I-beam. With everything clamped and ready to go, it's time to weld. The welder I'm using today is my YesWelder Versus DP200. This welder was sent out to me as a demo to test out the unit. The DP200 is a multi-process welder. It supports MIG, flux, lift TIG, stick welding, has dual pulse technology, delivers cleaner and high quality welds, and reducing splatter, and ideal for precision welding. The smart parameter machine automatically adjusts voltage, current, and wire speed based on the material thickness. It is spool gun compatible. It has a 7-inch large LCD screen. The firmware on this welder is upgradable using the USB-C plug inside the welder. I welded up the tip of the wedge, and I also laid down several more beads to build up that area so I can sand it down and form a nice sharp edge. Once I was happy with the way the edge of the wedge was, I then took my YesWelder Cut 65 Pro and I cut off a plate. So when I do weld the wedge to the I-beam, I'll weld this to the back of the wedge to even make it stronger. I'm going to tack the wedge into place. Once I'm happy, I'm going to fully weld it in. Next thing I did was that plate I took out for the back of the wedge. I set it in place and welded that up as well. I then lined up the bottom I-beam piece that I'm using for the bottom of the log splitter. I tacked it in, double checked, made sure it was all lined up, then fully welded it in. This YesWelder DP200 is an amazing welder. It's super easy to set up, and it lays down an excellent bead. With the welding completed, next thing to do is test it out. So I grabbed a couple logs off the wood pile and ran it through to see how it worked. The plate I made for the bottle jack worked out really well. I was able to put a log in place, either tighten it or loosen it so I can get the log close as possible. This bottle jack is not the fastest, so being able to adjust it so the log is right at the wedge made it quicker. So there you have it. It was a fun project. It didn't really cost me anything. It's perfect for me cutting up those logs for my fire pit. I hope you enjoy the video. If you have not already, please like the channel and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.